Little Beep. I will be hosting the debate tonight. Let's get on with today's debate, which will be on the controversial topic of communism, and later on the separation of church and state. Now to learn a little bit about the topic, we will be hearing a bit from our American history specialist, Slushy. How's it going? Can you tell us about communism?
I'm doing fine, thanks, Little Beep. Communism is the idea of a political system where private property is replaced by public ownership. People's wages are determined based on their needs and abilities.
Thank you, Slushy. Now we'll head into the FNN debate room, where there will be two very special guests this evening. That's right. Good evening, ladies and gents. Thank you, Slushy. My name is Little Beep. Check me out on SoundCloud, and I'll be your host on this evening debate. Today, we have 80s Mr. Will Wenninger and Mr. Scott Dilger here to take the floor on some of the most debatable questions on communism. Stay tuned for a second debate on the separation between church and state. On the right, here I have Mr. Will Wenninger, a history genius, athlete, fantastic bod, and he has a dazzling sense of fashion. On my left, I have notorious Mr. Scott Dilger, Quiz Master, What's It Wizard, and Dum Dum Demolisher. Gentlemen, you know the rules. No swearing, no violence, just a friendly debate. So here we have the first question. Was communism a threat to America? We'll have a coin flip to see, as just how we're just puppets. I'm just going to give the floor to Mr. Dilger. So, you have the floor for our first question, which is regarding communism. Mr. Dilger, do you believe that the Sacro Vanzetti trial was just or unjust?
For those who do not know what this is, the Sacco Vanzetti trial was two radical anarchists who were sentenced to death for the murder and robbery of a paymaster at a shoe company and his guard. They were arrested when heading to claim a car that was supposedly connected to the murders. Despite lack of evidence, these two were charged and executed. 50 years later, the Massachusetts governor issued a proclamation saying that the pair were given an unfair trial and convicted, and asked for any disgrace to be forever removed from their name. This question is not meant to ask if their trial was just, but was executing radicals just? They were radicals who were a threat to society, and even if they did not commit the crime, something had to be done with these threats. Radicalism is a huge impairment of society as a whole, because radicals are willing to do violent, dangerous things to get what they want.
And Mr. Wenninger, what is your stance?
Despite little factual evidence, these two men were sentenced to death for the murder of an accountant at a shoe company and his guard, who were delivering money. Death is not an option to deal with people's political beliefs that differ from your own.
Now to the next debate question. Is communism a threat to America? And to Slushy for the description of communism.
Communism is a political system first used widespreadly in Russia after their November Revolution when the Bolsheviks took over. This caused the first Red Scare where Americans were afraid of communism and communists taking over the U.S., like how they took over Russia. People did not want the negative effects that communism brings, which caused massive anti-radical sentiment within the U.S.
Thank you, Slushy. Now we'll head into the FNN debate room, where there will be two very special guests this evening.
Well, Little Beep, I believe that communism allows for the complete equality between all social classes. This brings about improvements in public health and education. Poverty will decrease with the government sharing of all the production of food and materials between the people.
And now, 80s Wenninger.
Communism is detrimental to our society because it takes the wages from a hardworking man and gives them to the lazy of the society. Why should a factory manager make as much as a man shoveling coal? Also, getting rid of private property would be devastating to business and all individuals as a whole.
For our next question, it is about whether the Palmer raids were justifiable. For this question, we will start with you, Mr. Wenninger.
The Palmer raids were raids conducted after World War I when the Red Scare was in full swing. These were done to arrest and deport foreign radicals and anarchists to get them off American soil.
These were clear and definite attacks upon innocent foreign people whose only crime was having a political belief that contradicted standard American beliefs. These people were treated completely and utterly inhumanely, as they were expelled from their new homeland just for their political beliefs.
And to you, Mr. Dilger.
I believe this was justifiable since this was done in order to protect Americans and our current safe and most importantly free lifestyle. They can either sit around and watch these communists brainwash our children into destroying our country, or we can send them back to where they belong.
And now, into the next question. Would a peacetime version of the Sedition Act be a beneficial to the U.S.? Mr. Dilger, you have the floor.
The Peacetime Sedition Act was proposed by William A. Palmer, the one who the raids were named after, to Congress in order to decrease pro-communist speech. A sedition act was only to be imposed during an emergency, which the Red enemy seemed like an imminent threat that was proposed but never passed. Our opinion about this is that a peacetime sedition would allow for the government to run without worrying about criticism or threat of an uprising within the country. This would improve the efficiency of the government and society as a whole, since you do not have to deal with radicals and their profound opinions.
And how do you respond to this, Mr. Wenninger?
In my opinion, this would be a huge insult to our founding fathers and current society. To change the First Amendment to only allow for free speech that is friendly to the current government would destroy any sort of freedom that we have. Not being able to speak against the government would put ourselves in a position as tyrannical governments who have no freedom of speech.
That's all for the first half of the debate. We'll be back after the break. And we're back, folks. And now, our next debate topic, separation between the church and state. And Mr. Slushy, what exactly is separation between church and state?
Separation between church and state is an idea that is an interpretation of the First Amendment. The First Amendment states that there will be freedom of religion for all people. Separation of church and state is a statement that makes sure that the government has nothing to do with religion. Our country was, however, founded on religious roots, but the religion it was founded on does not define our values.
Thank you, Slushy. And now to our first question. Should there be separation between the church and state? Mr. Dilger, you have first spot on the floor.
Thank you, Little Beep. No, there shouldn't be separations because religion being a part of politics is inevitable. The government was founded on religious principles and their involvement with religion should stay that way.
All right, and now, back to Mr. Wenninger on his opinion.
It is ideal for there to be no involvement between the church and the state. Not meaning that the state should forget religious values entirely, but there should be no enforcement of religious ideas and values onto the people who are a part of the state. Political leaders should be able to let their individual values influence their decisions. The First Amendment states that there should be always freedom of religion.
Alright. Y'all should get this debate into a sick beat. Time to get the next question. Do modern politicians rely on religion in their decision making? Mr. Dilger, to you.
Yes. Politicians rely heavily on their religious beliefs to influence the laws they make. This is obvious in their actions towards laws of state security. They cut off specific countries because of their religion.
Interesting. What are your thoughts, Mr. W?
There is no statement about whether individual politicians rely on religion as part of their job, but the government as a whole does not make any decision respecting any specific religion.
Gentlemen, this is the final question. There is no statement about whether individual politicians rely on religion as a part of their job, but the government as a whole does not make any decision respecting a specific religion.
No. The government can partially force their religion upon people, although the First Amendment says that Congress shall make no laws respecting the establishment of a religion. The congressman has the ability to express their freedom of religion as long as they do not state that a certain religion is the right one.
And Mr. Wenninger, what is your stance?
Yes, the government cannot force upon their own religion. The idea of separation between church and state comes from interpretation of the First Amendment, which states that there shall be freedom of religion and no law supporting any specific religion. Since the state has power, the people were concerned that it would enforce their will upon them and force them to worship their own religion.
Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for our heated debaters. Thank you for viewing tonight. We hope that you'll all have been educated to